Okay, good afternoon everybody and welcome to this webinar which is looking at green leadership for hotel managers. I'm here with Eamon Casey, who is the General Manager for the Powerscourt Hotel, Resort and Spa, which is a Marriott Autograph collection, and he's going to be talking to us today from his perspective about corporate social responsibility and in the context of green leadership. So the first question I have for you, Eamon, is what is your understanding of corporate social responsibility from a hotel or hospitality perspective?
I think it's important for every business to understand that corporate social responsibility is a real living part of how the business is operated and how the business is managed. It could be simply termed how the business is perceived in the local area that it operates, but more importantly, or more in detail, how it impacts the local area, the local community in which it operates. And I think as leaders, we need to fully understand our responsibility involved with the corporate social responsibility, because it's not something that is optional, it's not discretionary, it's something that needs to be taken seriously.
Okay, very good. And then what insights can you provide regarding the interplay of corporate social responsibility and ethical business practices at Powerscourt?
I think both corporate social responsibility and ethical business practices are interlinked quite closely. As I mentioned, corporate social responsibility is more about how the business acts and is perceived to act in its local community, its local area. Business ethics is really about how the business is managed and I suppose the processes, but also the way in which the decisions are made within the closed walls of the business. Whilst the two things are separate, I don't believe you could have one without the other. A business couldn't be successful in its endeavours to act ethically unless it was demonstrating good social corporate responsibility. And a company that wishes to demonstrate good social corporate responsibility wouldn't be able to achieve that if they weren't managing their business in an ethical way. So the two go very, very hand in hand, but they are two separate processes or manners in which you would approach the management of a business.
And that whole management of the business brings us to our next question, Eamon. In terms of your role as General Manager of Powerscourt, you're setting the agenda in the hotel, so how important is leadership in terms of corporate social responsibility and the whole idea of ethical business practices?
I think that they're fundamental. I think leadership is the key point there, especially when we speak about corporate social responsibility. It's something that must be lived in every stream of a business. Every approach that the business is taking, whether it be a new project or just day-to-day operations, needs to consider the corporate social responsibility, but also how changes in operations or how new developments may impact that. I think really for it to be held seriously within any organisation, it must be led, and that would be led from the top, but also to ensure that everybody is on board. It's not something that can be discussed at meetings if it's not lived in the day-to-day operations. So I think it's extremely important. I think corporate social responsibility is something you lead rather than something you would manage. It requires energy, effort, but more importantly, it requires everybody to be on board and to share that focus.
Very good. And then moving on from that, what, from your perspective, what in your opinion are the key notable features of sound leadership in terms of underpinning corporate social responsibility? Or attributes could be another word maybe.
I think that the theme of leadership is really something that's quite important. There's varying degrees of understanding of corporate social responsibility, and it's important that each leader for each individual business would define the objectives, but also the parameters that each business will focus on, and very much to lead those. For those people who, I suppose, are a little reluctant or a little unsure as to what is involved, it's important that they see that they see leadership, but they also can follow that guide and get involved to the level that they're comfortable to do. So I think leadership is probably one of the most important aspects, and remembering that to truly deliver results, you must be actively involved and actually participating in these activities. They're not something that are simply strategies. They must be demonstrated and lived.
Very good. In terms then of your hotel's corporate social responsibility, what ways does it identify or reflect the UNWTO's strategic development goals? There's 17 of them, ranging from reducing poverty to ultimately reducing our impact on the environment, the physical environment. So how does your hotel identify with those or reflect those in the day-to-day business?
Well, Powerscourt Hotel Resort and Spa is set amidst the Dublin Mountains. It is built on the Powerscourt Estate, which is a 1,000-acre natural forest and leisure estate. We are very much associated with and closely linked to our local community. We would depend on our local community for their support, and they would depend on us for employment. As an example, where possible, we would always employ people who are living in the local area for roles when they become available. In terms of our purchasing strategy, whilst we do need to purchase things globally, if we have an opportunity, we will try and source things locally, and that's probably best demonstrated in our food purchasing, where we would have a first choice for local. We work with local small producers. For example, our beehives, which are on the estate, are managed by a local bee producer, and that helps with our development of our local ecology. And when it comes to the kitchen, we would be buying things like meat and vegetables, where possible, from local suppliers.
Okay, very good. And obviously that feeds in, I'm sure, to the marketing of the hotel too, in terms of being able to promote that local provenance. So what is your understanding then, really drilling into this whole idea of the physical environment, what's your understanding of the relationship between corporate social responsibility and climate change?
I think climate change is a global problem that everyone must be on board to in some way reduce, if not eradicate, in our lifetime. And the best way in which we can combat that is by sharing focus and all doing what we can. When it comes to larger organizations, we very much have larger responsibilities. When making a decision, for example, it may be the replacement of plant and machinery. In making those decisions, we have a real opportunity to deliver change, but also to make wise decisions. And I think if every organisation that could make those decisions, makes decisions that favour climate or protection of their local environment, these types of activities will help us to all demonstrate that we are all playing a part in what is a global problem. But it's really to accept a share of that responsibility and do what we can and do what we can quickly.
Okay. And underpinning that then is the whole idea of sustainability. And I suppose for green policies to be sustainable, they have to make good business sense. Mm-hmm. So what's your understanding of that relationship between corporate social responsibility from Powerscourt's perspective and you in the role as general manager and a sustainable business?
I think that the two things go hand in hand. It's really fruitless in some ways to endeavour to be socially responsible and not take it seriously. So as a business, if you are setting out to become a responsible purchaser, that means that you must give energy and effort into that activity, and it may mean that you may need to pay a little bit more for something of a higher value that is sourced locally, and some people would consider that to be ineffective cost management. But when thinking about cost management, we shouldn't just consider the actual unit price. We need to think of the wider goals of the business. Ultimately, it's about creating balance and doing what we can that is realistic. So in the example of Powerscourt, where possible, we would purchase foods that are in season locally. We wouldn't necessarily import those same items from further afield. And it's steps like that that make sense, but also add real value to the business, but more importantly, the local community.
Very good. And then in terms of your procurement, to drill into that a little bit more, strategy and the processes, can you describe how ethical and sustainable practices are embodied or embedded within the supply chain of the hotel? Is that something that percolates throughout every level of the organisation, not just at your level as GM? Would everybody be aware about ethical purchasing?
I would hope that everybody would have a realisation that it is important and it is a priority. I think we're very much guided by the demands of our guests. People have expectations as to the things that they are willing to see and have in their hotel rooms. And there's been a lot of change already achieved in this area. Things like single-use plastics have massively reduced. Polystyrene cups, which were often very widely used in the US, are now almost eradicated in their use. And that's come from the global hospitality companies who have mandated that these products shouldn't be used. And I suppose that helps in each operation of those larger companies reducing their use or even assisting to eradicate them. I think we look to our guests ultimately, and it's about finding a balance with what guests are looking to see and the products and items that they would like in hotel rooms, but also finding a balance between delivering also a luxury environment. Not necessarily everything we use is recycled, but when we are making our disposal decisions, we would make the best decisions for, I suppose, that item to ensure that it's disposed of sustainably. So it's a balancing act. I think it's something that no organisation will ever get 100% right, but it's about setting out to be the best you can be at this particular time and constantly working towards that mission of purchasing wisely, but also if worst case scenario you have something that needs to be disposed of, that you're disposing of it wisely and continuing that chain.
I mean, is that something you feel customers are becoming more aware of in terms of demanding hotels globally to be sustainable, to be ethical in their business practices, and possibly being a deciding factor when they book a hotel between one or the other?
I think it's certainly very, very important. There's been a number of initiatives in hospitality that started many, many years ago that have been very, very successful. The idea that guests don't necessarily need to change their towels and bedding in their room every day has become a standard across the world. Recycle bins in hotels and self-service restaurants, again, are now commonplace, and people are naturally seeking to follow them. It's not uncommon for a guest to ask in a public space, where is there a recycling bin, if they need to dispose of something, rather than just looking for the refuse area. I do think there's a growing trend of people looking to select a hotel for its sustainability, or if it has particular green credentials, and that's something that's certainly growing. I don't think it's the only factor, but as we deal with a lot of corporations when booking for conferences, for example, or larger groups, they would have a heightened sensitivity to our own practices at the property, and it's not uncommon for them to request further information in advance of booking a large piece of business as to our local efforts with corporate social responsibility, or even items as detailed as our sustainability policies, waste management, for example, because they're keen to be seen to do businesses that take these things seriously.
Very good. Then, from your knowledge and experience, how interlinked is ethical employment with corporate social responsibility? So we've talked considerably now about the purchasing end of things, but then, back to the Sustainable Development Goals again, about employability and sustainable employment. Is that something that you feel is important also?
I think it's hugely important. I think the two things go naturally hand in hand. I mentioned that corporate social responsibility can easily be defined as how your business is perceived and how it impacts its local community. When we talk about ethical employment practices, it is very important that the employees that work within your business feel part of that business, but also have a respect for what happens at the business. Interlinking that back to corporate social responsibility, we would always endeavour to employ locally. So that really means that a large number of people who are living in the local community and impacted by our business and the actions that we take are also our employees. So it is important that not only do they enjoy coming to work, that they truly are advocates for what we're doing at the hotel, outside in the community, and that they have, I suppose, a sense of pride and respect for where they are employed. And that really goes hand in hand with the manner in which we would treat our employees to ensure that not only are they well respected and well treated at work, but they also enjoy being a part of what we do.
Very good. Then, considering the following statement, the relationship between host communities and sustainable development, how would you explain the underlying dynamics of this relationship? So people in the local region, in your locality up there, around the hotel, how are they impacted positively or negatively by this hotel's presence, I suppose?
I think that the key term there is host. People have been living in all areas of the world for many centuries, and it's not uncommon for a new business to move into those areas, and you're moving into what would be an established community or close to an established community. It's important that great consideration would be given to how the people living in that area, the community, will harmonise with the new business or the new development. Truly, they must harmonise for there to be a success. The large organisation or the business will be dependent on its local community, and the local community can also benefit from its presence. But that needs to be well thought through, and there needs to be, I would say, focus given to the term host, because the local community are ultimately going to be hosting that large organisation, and it needs to be a collaborative relationship where both parties benefit. And I think in the example of Powerscourt, the hotel was built a little over 20 years ago, and we would have a number of good examples where before the hotel was built, it was a rural area, and we needed to work in developing the hotel with the local community to ensure that they were on board, they understood what the development would mean for the local area, and their concerns were, I suppose, responded to and dealt with, but more importantly, that the benefits were shared with them, and the benefits, for example, of increased visitors to the local area, but also employment opportunities, and ultimately infrastructural improvements that would come with the large hotel being built. So I think it's a relationship. I think it needs to be given great consideration, and it's a relationship that for any business to be successful, it requires compromise on both sides, but it must be considered. And if there was a situation where there was hostility or objection, those things must be worked through, because a business needs to be a part of its local community rather than in any form of opposition to it for it to be successful.
Very good. And apart from employment, obviously, which is a benefit to the local community, and local procurement, which is supporting local businesses, do you do anything else in the hotel, like sponsoring a team locally or something to give back and to sort of show that the hotel is there for the benefit of the local community?
Yes, we would be part of the local community in that we would participate at every opportunity to support our local community, but also we would be welcoming and invite them in if we are arranging, for example, an outdoor activity like a charity walk. That would be something that we would extend an invitation to our local residents. and encourage that they feel proud to be associated or proud to be living beside our business. It is something that you must, the larger party being the business, must make the first step in terms of creating that invitation, and as a business we must devote energy to that relationship because there's an awful lot of individuals that need to see and feel that value. So it's something that we must remember that we need to take the lead on. It takes a certain degree of energy and effort, but it is very, very important to what we do.
Very good. And then finally, if you were to sum up the business case for corporate social responsibility and green sustainable practices to any business, but I suppose specifically for hotels, what would be the key aspects in your opinion that would sort of be underpinning the whole argument for a corporate socially responsible business that's mindful about sustainability and its impact on the local community?
I think to truly answer the question, it's important to point out that I don't think it's necessarily a business case. A business case is generally around supporting the decision to make a financial investment and to consider its possible returns. I think the way the world, but also how businesses have evolved, corporate social responsibility and ethics are now extremely important. They really are the factors that would underpin the development of successful businesses. Now, some organisations have been early adopters and they are now leaders, whilst others are now developing their own strategies to become more responsible, more green. But I do believe that as time passes, these initiatives of the past are now becoming the expectations of the present. So there isn't necessarily a business case. There's a number of pressures. There's a number of reasons why a business would make these decisions, but truly it's when the decision is made rather than whether to make the decision. I think a business that sets out to avoid being corporate, to avoid demonstrating good corporate social responsibility or business ethics ultimately will not be successful. They may run into challenges in the short or medium term. So that's not necessarily an option. It's about how quickly you can turn the corner and develop those strategies, develop those practices to become, I suppose, become aligned with the overall responsibilities that every business has. So a business case, I'm not sure that it really is truly a decision that people have an option to make. If a business is to be successful, it must take that the responsibilities that come with running a business seriously, and that would be demonstrating good sustainability practices, but also acting ethically. And I think as things have evolved, there isn't much room for businesses to avoid those responsibilities. So the business case question, I'm not sure if I've answered it there fully. I'm not sure that there really is a decision to make. It's about a time. Do we start now, or are we going to try and delay the inevitable? But ultimately, all of these things are around us across the world. We must take them seriously.
Okay, and then just to sum up, I suppose another way of approaching that same question is, you're part of an Irish brand, MHL Hotels, but you're also a Marriott brand. So how do you benchmark success in terms of your performance in Powerscourt against other hotels in MHL or even in the wider context of Marriott? How do you know corporate social responsibility-wise and sustainability-wise you're ticking all the boxes?
Well, it's a good question. I would say it's most important that we set out not to tick boxes. It's about truly setting out to do good when it comes to corporate social responsibility and to be comfortable that we're doing all that we can. We would, of course, set objectives internally. That might be to operate 6 events that we would involve the local community with every year, or it might be to raise a certain amount of money to support local charities. But ultimately, we all need to play our part and to be comfortable that what we're doing represents a substantial contribution to the local area. In terms of benchmarking that, we would ensure that we would track all of our activities, and for Marriott International, for example, we would log those activities so we can contribute to the Marriott overall worldwide contribution. When it comes to sustainability, we do track and measure our own progress for two reasons. One, to ensure that we can account for and measure all that we are doing. If we're implementing an activity to increase our recycling, we want to be able to track that that's been successful. And with tracking, we can measure our activities year on year. So if we are recycling a certain number of 100 tons of dry recycling this year, how does that compare with that of last year? And those are important things to track. Every operation in every hotel is different. It might be different in terms of the area in which it operates or the size of the hotel. But I think it's more important to benchmark the activities rather than the actual results. And we would do that within our own organisation, MHL. We have a sustainability manager who works with each individual property to ensure that they're maximising the opportunities that are available to them, and then collectively gathers that information to put, I suppose, in our company-wide portfolio to ensure that we're tracking all that the company is doing collectively. But simply, I would say, tracking is important to ensure that we're doing what we set out to do, constantly measuring, and to ensure that we're on track to, I suppose, continue that progress, but also on track for the goals that we would set ourselves. But when we're talking about tracking and recording, where it becomes most useful is that we can then compare it to how we performed in the past. And are we refining, are we getting better at the activities we set out to do? There's a number of different accreditations that are available to businesses, and we would work with those. Green Hospitality, for example, help us to track and to measure our sustainability activities, and that helps us to gain those accreditations. But I think it comes in a sequence. First of all, it's about making the decision to manage sustainability properly. Then it's about deciding what it is that you're going to do or what it is you can do at that particular time. And then the third stage would be actually tracking it, which may help to gain an accreditation. You can't really start backwards. I think it also helps us to, I suppose, stand over what we say we do. It's one thing for a company to set out to act sustainably. It's another thing for a company to be able to demonstrate that it's acting sustainably, and that would be an important reason for us managing our project on an ongoing basis. It's not something that we look at on an intermittent basis. It's something that we're looking at all of the time.
That's very good. And it's great to hear you finish up by saying you're part of the Green Hospitality Initiative. That's something I know you've been awarded, I think, in the last couple of years.
Well, last year we achieved the silver accreditation. We're currently working towards our gold, and I suppose, we're focused on it. We may not achieve the gold status this year because there's a lot to do. But the key thing that we need to remember is that the accreditation of silver is something that we're very proud of, and it certainly takes a lot of energy and effort to maintain that grading. As we look to the future, we look at what new initiatives or activities that we can do that will help us get the gold accreditation. So it's a continuing process. It's not an exam that you pass or fail. It's something that you must continue to practice all the way, and that is, I suppose, that is the responsibility of our hotel's green team. We have a committee of employees and managers that work within their own departments to live the green, sustainable mission within our property, and that helps us to keep things alive. And they would meet regularly and they would discuss the initiatives and projects that are underway, and that helps us to keep momentum on what was a huge amount of work as we started out. It now just needs to be managed and ensure that we're on track. They would be, I suppose, the key readers of all of our reporting to ensure that their activities are resulting in delivering trackable improvements, but also trackable results in terms of things like energy reduction, waste management, water use reduction, and all of the activities that we set out to do are also things that we would track. So we would track hours participated in green initiatives or green activities, but also hours participated in community activities, so that we ensure that we are really, we have something tangible at the end in terms of a long list of activities that we have completed.
Okay, Eamon, so thank you for that. I suppose summing it up in the context of what we were talking about, corporate social responsibility and green-focused leadership, the essence I'm getting from talking to you today is this is something that has to be embedded into the fabric of the hotel. It has to be part of the culture of the hotel, that everybody signs up to. Absolutely, it is led first and foremost by the management team in the hotel, but it has to be something that everybody signs up for, and that seems to be a concerted effort on behalf of yourself in Powerscourt, and that's why it works. It's not just a business case, it is the right thing to do, and everybody has to be on board to make it work.
Yeah, and to truly do the right thing in all instances, you must believe that what you're doing is important and is that there's a greater purpose to what you're doing. I think that people once said that true business ethics is doing the right thing even when nobody is watching or nobody is measuring, and that would be a good thought provoker for businesses when you talk about sustainability, because doing the right thing all of the time is difficult, but it's even more difficult if you're looking for praise or reward for doing the right thing, because what once was an accolade for the businesses of the past has now become an expectation, and it's important that people are doing the right thing or managing their businesses ethically for the right reasons, but also that when it comes to sustainability and practices to protect the environment, that you're also doing those consistently all of the time.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Eamon.
Thank you. Pleasure.